"You will regret this," human said the alien queen, and then she hugged me tightly, and I don't know why the human walked carefully into the vast chamber, eyes adjusting to the pale, shimmering light that seemed to float in midair. He was not used to such spaces. On Earth, buildings had corners, walls, and familiar smells. Here, the air shimmered with a faint hum, and every surface seemed alive, responding to movement and sound. The human had been told to stay calm, to remember that he represented his species, and to be careful with his words. But even with all the preparation, nothing could have prepared him for the moment the alien queen appeared. She was taller than any human could imagine, her presence filling the chamber before she even spoke. Her skin was iridescent, reflecting colors the human could not name, and her eyes were deep pools that seemed to see into the very essence of a being. She wore no armor, no weapons, only flowing robes that moved like liquid in the air. Every being in the room, aliens from countless worlds, bowed or hovered in respect. The human, however, was told to remain standing. He straightened his back, hands lightly at his sides, and waited. "You will regret this, human," the alien queen said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried through the chamber as if it had weight. The human felt it in his chest before his ears. The words were cold, precise, and full of warning. Every instinct told him that she meant harm, that she was about to punish him for stepping into her domain. He swallowed, trying to keep his heartbeat calm. But then, without any pause, without the expected threat or strike, she stepped closer, and to his complete shock, she hugged him. The human froze, his mind raced. In every story he had read, every warning he had received about first contact with alien species, nothing prepared him for this. He didn't even know how to react. He had been trained for diplomacy, for negotiation, for analysis. But a hug, that was not part of the plan. His arms hovered awkwardly at his sides before he finally responded, slowly, awkwardly returning the gesture. Her embrace was firm, but it was not heavy. There was warmth in it, a strange, almost calming energy that seemed to flow into him. He felt an unexpected sense of comfort, as if the weight of the galaxy itself had shifted for a moment. The chamber was silent. Aliens from countless species froze mid-motion, some widening eyes, others tilting heads in confusion. No one had seen this before. A hug from the queen was unheard of. Her reputation was one of absolute control, wisdom, and sometimes fear. No one ever imagined she would show such openness, such emotion, especially to a human. And yet there he stood, receiving the unexpected gesture with a mixture of surprise and cautious curiosity. The human finally stepped back, blinking at the queen. I don't understand," he said. His voice was steady, though his heart still raced. Why did you hug me?" The words felt strange in his mouth, unsure, tentative. He had spent months preparing for negotiations, for the exchange of knowledge, for building trust. But nothing in his training told him how to ask an immortal, powerful alien ruler why she had suddenly held him close. The queen's eyes softened slightly. It was a movement so subtle that a casual observer might have missed it, but the human noticed. He had learned to read micro-expressions in his training, but these eyes were different. They held a history, a weight, a memory that stretched beyond what any human could imagine. "You are different," she said quietly. Her voice, while still strong, carried a strange vulnerability. "Your presence, it awakened something I thought was lost." The human tilted his head. He had been prepared for many things, hostility, cold judgment, even dismissal, but not this. "Awakens something?" he asked. "I don't understand." She took a step back, her robes flowing like water. "We have lived for eons under a rule of control," she said, her gaze sweeping the chamber, landing briefly on the observers, then back to him. "Emotion is dangerous, it is fragile, it is chaotic. My people learned to suppress it to survive, and yet when you stand here, I feel what I have not felt in a long, long time." The human's brow furrowed. He didn't understand the words completely, but the tone, the energy was clear. This was not anger nor threat. This was something else, something curious, something human even, and yet the alien's words carried a gravity he could barely comprehend. He took a slow breath. Are you saying I've changed something?" he asked. The words sounded small, insignificant even to him, but the queen did not laugh. Instead, she looked at him as if weighing the truth of them. "You do not know what you carry within you," she said. "You humans, you hold a spark. A spark that is rare, that my people have not seen in countless millennia. It is not your technology, nor your strength, nor your knowledge. It is something within, something alive, something that does not fade when faced with the universe. Her gaze softened further, and for the first time she smiled, not a smile of mockery or victory, but of recognition. That is why I hugged you. Because your presence reminded me of what we have forgotten. The human swallowed again, trying to understand. He had heard stories of alien civilizations, of empires that spanned galaxies, of rulers who lived for thousands of years. He had never thought about what it meant to live for so long. To forget joy, to forget comfort, to forget the simple things that made life worth living. He had only thought about survival, negotiation, and diplomacy. But here, in this moment, he felt the weight of what she had said. The Queen's people had survived, but at what cost? He took another step forward, curiosity pushing aside confusion. You mean you've lost something important?" His words were cautious, careful. He didn't want to offend, didn't want to assume. But the Queen nodded just slightly, emotion full of history and meaning. "Yes," she said softly. "We traded feeling for survival, logic for emotion, certainty for uncertainty. And now perhaps it is time to remember." She looked around the chamber, her eyes scanning the other delegates, the observers, the countless alien species that had gathered to witness this first contact. "You, human, are a reminder that life is more than survival. That connection is more than convenience. That hope is more than strategy." The human nodded slowly, still trying to absorb the weight of her words. He had spent his life preparing to represent his species, to explain, to negotiate, to defend. He had not prepared to be a reminder of something that had been forgotten by a civilization older than the stars themselves. But as he looked at her, he realized that this was not a threat. This was an invitation to teach, to share, to connect. The chamber remained silent, but the air seemed different. It was no longer filled with expectation or fear or authority. It was filled with possibility. The other aliens, still observing, began to stir slightly, whispers of curiosity passing between them. They had expected a confrontation, a test, a challenge. Instead, they were witnessing something they had never imagined. A connection between species, a bridge formed not by words or technology, but by presence, by understanding, by recognition of what it meant to be alive. The human finally spoke, his voice firmer now, steadier. I don't know what I did or what I am supposed to do now, but I am here, and I am ready to listen." The Queen regarded him for a long moment, her gaze deep and searching. Then she nodded. "That is enough. For now, that is enough. Listen and be present. That is more than many of my people have learned in 1,000 cycles." She stepped back, the shimmer of her robes fading slightly into the background of the chamber. "We will speak again. But remember this, human, your kind carries something precious. Do not waste it." The human felt a strange mixture of relief, awe, and purpose. He had survived countless simulations, countless training exercises, countless warnings about the unpredictability of alien civilizations. And yet, nothing compared to this moment, when the most powerful being he had ever met recognized something in him that he had never known was important. He had no words to match it, no gesture to fully express the depth of what he felt. So he simply nodded, keeping his gaze steady, letting the presence of the Queen and the weight of her words sink into him. As he was escorted from the chamber, his mind raced. He thought about what she had said, about what humans carried within them, about what it meant to be alive in a galaxy so vast and ancient. He thought about the stories he would tell, the lessons he would share, the bridges he could build. And though he did not yet understand the full implications of the Queen's hug, he felt certain that something had shifted, not just for him, but for everyone who had witnessed it, for everyone who would hear of it, for the galaxy itself. For the first time, the human realized that being human was more than a matter of biology or culture. It was a spark, a force, a light that could touch even the oldest, most distant civilizations. And in that moment, he understood why the alien Queen had hugged him, why her warning had carried weight, why her presence had been both terrifying and comforting. He did not yet know the full story, but he knew this. He was part of something larger than himself, something powerful in the quietest, simplest way possible. And that knowledge, fragile as it was, filled him with hope. And somewhere in the vastness of her chamber, the alien Queen smiled once more, a small, genuine expression of connection. She had not acted out of fear or power, nor out of whim or impulse. She had acted out of recognition, of remembrance, of the simple, enduring truth that sometimes, Even the smallest presence can awaken what has been lost for eons. And in that hug, brief and unexpected, something ancient and vital had been stirred again, something that would ripple through the galaxy in ways neither of them yet fully understood. The human walked slowly through the corridors of the alien palace, trying to process everything that had happened. His mind was a whirlwind of questions and wonder. How could a single species, a single human, evoke something so powerful in the alien queen? He had always known humans were capable of emotion, of creativity, of resilience, but he had never imagined that those qualities could affect an entire civilization. Every step echoed lightly on the smooth, luminous floors, each sound amplified as if the building itself was listening. The queen had returned to her council, leaving him in a waiting room that shimmered softly in the same pale light as the chamber. He glanced around. The room was filled with devices and objects that he could not name. Some floated gently in the air, slowly rotating, casting reflections across the walls. Others hummed quietly, releasing pulses of light that seemed almost like communication. He had been trained to analyze alien technology, to observe without assuming, but none of his training prepared him for this. It was as if the room itself was alive, aware of his presence. A soft chime echoed through the corridor, and a door slid open silently. The human stepped inside and was met by a small alien aide. She had soft, translucent skin and eyes like liquid silver. Her movements were graceful, almost dance-like, and she spoke in a gentle voice that resonated in the human's chest. "You are expected," she said. "The queen wishes to speak with you again." The human nodded, unsure what to expect. He had thought the first encounter was remarkable, unforgettable even, but now he was to meet her again. He walked down the corridor, passing towering columns that shifted color as he moved. Each step felt heavy with expectation, yet there was also an unusual sense of calm. Something about the way the palace responded to him reminded him of Earth in small, subtle ways, a feeling of belonging, of being acknowledged. When he entered the chamber, the queen was waiting. She stood near a large window that looked out into the expanse of space. Stars twinkled like distant fires, and he realized for the first time just how vast the galaxy was. He felt small, almost insignificant, yet in the presence of the queen, he also felt important. She turned to him and smiled, a faint curve of lips that seemed to carry centuries of thought. "You wondered why I hugged you," she said softly. "It is because your kind carries something my people lost long ago. Something that is rare in the galaxy, the ability to feel deeply and openly without fear of weakness." The human took a deep breath. I think I understand, but why is it so rare?" The queen walked closer to him, her eyes reflecting the stars outside. "My people once had it," she said. "Long ago we were like you, curious, compassionate, alive with emotion, but survival demanded we change. Emotions became dangerous, empathy led to conflict, hope became a liability. Over thousands of cycles, we suppressed it, learning to survive without it, and in doing so, we lost something precious." The human's heart beat faster. You lost the ability to connect?" "Yes," the queen admitted. "Connection, comfort, joy, all of it became distant memories. We built a civilization that lasted for millennia, but we forgot what it meant to feel alive. That is why your presence is remarkable. You remind me of what we were." He thought about what she said. Humans had survived wars, disasters, and countless challenges, yet they had held on to hope, to kindness, to the ability to care for one another. That was what made them different. That was what made them strong in ways the galaxy often overlooked. He realized that this quality, so simple yet so profound, could be the bridge between species, the light that connected distant civilizations. The queen continued, her voice softer now. "I warned you that you would regret this. I feared the changes you would bring. But now I see that my fear was not of you personally. It was of what your kind represents. You awaken what we thought was lost. You make us confront the truths we have avoided for so long. That is why I hugged you. Because for the first time in eons, I felt the possibility of rediscovery." The human nodded slowly. "So, you were afraid of feeling again?" The queen smiled faintly. "Yes, fear and hope are two sides of the same coin. We removed fear by removing hope. We removed hope by removing connection. And now you challenge that balance." He thought about this for a moment. It was hard to imagine a species capable of such longevity, of such power, yet vulnerable in this way. Humans often thought of themselves as fragile, short-lived, insignificant in the vastness of space. But here, he saw the opposite. Humans carried something extraordinary, the courage to feel, to care, to persist even when the odds seemed insurmountable. That was a strength the galaxy had underestimated. The Queen led him to a window that overlooked a planet covered in glimmering forests and oceans of shifting colors. "This world has been governed by logic alone for thousands of cycles," she said. "It is efficient, it is orderly, but it is hollow. We have built many such worlds, but none of them sing. None of them remember the joy of living. And yet, when your kind interacts with us, change happens. Laughter returns, curiosity awakens, cooperation spreads. You are a catalyst, human, and catalysts are dangerous." He felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. To be a catalyst was a heavy responsibility. One small action could ripple across the galaxy, creating waves of change that no one could predict. But he also felt hope. If humans could bring joy, empathy, and connection to civilizations that had forgotten them, perhaps there was a way to make the galaxy not only survive, but flourish. "Do you want me to stay?" he asked cautiously. "Do you need me here to help?" The Queen considered this for a moment. "I do not know," she said honestly. "I cannot predict the future, but I know that your presence has already begun to shift something fundamental. You remind us that life is more than calculation, more than survival. You remind us that to live is to feel, to care, to connect. That is a lesson many of my people have forgotten." He nodded again. "I will do my best. I don't know if I can teach your people everything, but I will try to share what I can. I will try to help you remember." The Queen's gaze softened further. "And that is enough for now. Sometimes simply being is more than enough. Sometimes presence speaks louder than words, louder than decrees, louder than any law." They stood together in silence for a while, gazing out at the stars. The human thought about the journey that had brought him here, the people he represented, and the incredible responsibility he now carried. He realized that humans were not just explorers or negotiators. They were connectors, healers, and catalysts. Their greatest strength was not technology or weapons, but the ability to inspire change through presence, through care, through resilience. The Queen finally turned to him. "There will be others," she said. "Other species who will question you, challenge you, perhaps even fear you. But remember this, you do not need to conquer, you do not need to dominate. Your strength lies in your humanity. That is why I hugged you. That is why you are here. That is why the galaxy is listening." He felt a warmth spread through him, a combination of understanding, purpose, and awe. To be seen in this way by such a powerful being was both humbling and exhilarating. He realized that the galaxy was not just a place of politics, conflict, and survival. It was a place of connection, of discovery, of emotion. And humans had a role to play that no one had anticipated. As he left the chamber, escorted once more by the gentle aide, he felt the hum of the palace around him. Each step seemed lighter, each breath more purposeful. He understood now that his mission was not only to represent humanity, but to share what humans carried within them: hope, empathy, curiosity, and the courage to feel. He understood that these qualities could change civilizations, awaken what had been lost, and bring life back to places long forgotten. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly in every direction. The human took a moment to look up, feeling small yet profoundly significant. Somewhere in the galaxy, the alien queen watched, her mind alight with memories and possibilities she had long suppressed. And somewhere, humanity's spark began to shine across the cosmos, quietly, gently, and yet with a force that could not be ignored. In that moment, the human realized that this journey was only beginning. The galaxy was vast, ancient, and full of mysteries. But he also realized that the simplest qualities, hope, empathy, connection, were the most powerful forces of all. And if humans could share those qualities, the universe would never be the same again. The human traveled through the galaxy aboard the Queen's emissary vessel, a sleek ship that seemed to bend light as it moved. Every surface glimmered faintly, and the hum of the engines was more like music than machinery. He watched planets drift past, each one unique. Some were oceans of bright, shifting colors, others had forests that glowed faintly at night, and some had vast deserts where the sand sparkled like glass. He marveled at the beauty of the galaxy, but he also felt the weight of responsibility pressing gently on his shoulders. It had been days since the first hug, but its impact was still fresh. He remembered the way the Queen had looked at him, the softness in her eyes, the truth in her words. Humans were capable of so much, he realized, but their greatest strength was invisible to the eyes: empathy, hope, and connection. He wondered what would happen if other species could see that spark as clearly as she had. Could it change their lives? Could it shift the balance of entire civilizations without a single weapon fired? The Queen had given him access to her archives, a vast collection of knowledge accumulated over millions of years. He spent hours studying the histories of countless species, their triumphs and failures, their stories of survival and loss. One pattern became clear: civilizations that suppressed emotion, that valued efficiency over connection, had survived, yes, but at great cost. Their worlds were orderly, their societies functional, but they lacked vibrancy. They lacked laughter, creativity, curiosity. They lacked the small joys that humans often took for granted. During one study session, the human noticed a small holographic record of the Queen's species from 1,000 cycles ago. It showed beings very similar to her, yet their movements were more relaxed, their gestures more fluid, their interactions filled with warmth and laughter. He realized that what had been lost was not just emotion, it was life itself in its fullest sense. The Queen's hug was not an act of whimsy. It was an acknowledgement of what her people had abandoned: the ability to experience the galaxy fully, to connect and to care. The human decided that he needed to share this perspective, to help others understand what humans carried within them. He began meeting with alien envoys who traveled aboard the same vessel, speaking gently, asking questions, and listening intently. He did not lecture or instruct. He simply shared stories of humanity, of small acts of kindness, of persistence in the face of adversity, of laughter in moments of uncertainty. Slowly, he noticed changes. The aliens began to smile more easily, to laugh quietly in the corners of the ship, to speak openly about their hopes and dreams. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but he could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The Queen observed him from a distance. She did not intervene, but she watched closely. She had never seen her people react this way before. A human, fragile and short-lived compared to her species, was awakening something that she thought had been lost forever. She felt a mixture of awe and apprehension. The ripple effect of his presence was already spreading, and she realized that her initial warning had been misplaced. He was not a threat. He was a teacher, a bridge, a reminder of what life could be when lived fully. One day, the vessel stopped near a planet where an alien civilization was struggling. Their cities were vast and impressive, built with precision and efficiency, yet the inhabitants moved through their lives with a quiet resignation. They performed their duties perfectly, yet there was no joy in their eyes, no spark of curiosity or creativity. The human stepped onto the planet, feeling the cool, smooth ground beneath his feet. He could sense the heaviness in the air, the suppressed emotions of the population. He began to walk through the city, speaking to anyone who would listen. He told stories of humans who faced impossible odds but never gave up hope. He shared simple acts of kindness, like helping a neighbor or comforting a friend. He listened to their stories, asked questions, and showed genuine interest in their lives. Slowly, he noticed small changes. A child smiled when he spoke, a worker laughed quietly while sharing a memory, an elder nodded with renewed curiosity. It was not instantaneous, but it was happening. The Queen observed these interactions from the vessel above. She felt a deep sense of relief mixed with wonder. Her species had survived countless challenges through control and suppression, but they had also lost the essence of living. And now, through the human, that essence was returning, not as a command, not as a law, but as a gift freely given and received. She realized that his presence was not only teaching her people, but inspiring her species to remember what it meant to truly live. As the days passed, the human continued his work across multiple civilizations. Wherever he went, subtle transformations occurred. Species that had been distrustful or withdrawn began to collaborate. Communities that had been divided by rules or tradition found common ground. Art, music, and creativity started to reappear in places that had long forgotten them. It was not a revolution of force or power. It was a revolution of presence, of empathy, of the quiet but unstoppable influence of humanity. The human began to understand the full scope of his role. He was not a conqueror, nor a diplomat in the traditional sense. He was a catalyst. His presence, his curiosity, and his capacity to care were changing the galaxy in ways that no technology or strategy could. He realized that humans had always carried this power, though they rarely recognized it. And now, with the Queen's guidance, he could share it with the universe. The Queen called him to the vessel one evening, near a nebula that glowed with shifting colors. She looked at him with a mixture of pride and wonder. "You have done more than I imagined," she said softly. "You have reminded many of what they lost, and you have awakened hope where there was none. But this is only the beginning. Your presence will continue to ripple through the galaxy, and you must be mindful of what you carry." The human nodded. "I understand. I never imagined my simple actions could have such an impact, but I see now that even small acts can grow like seeds in fertile soil." "Yes," the Queen replied, "and just as seeds need care, so too must your influence be guided with wisdom and patience. You are a bridge between worlds, a reminder that life is more than survival. You are teaching the galaxy to feel again." The human felt a warmth in his chest, a quiet but powerful satisfaction. He realized that this journey was larger than any mission he had ever undertaken. He was not only representing humanity, he was reminding civilizations of the most basic, yet most profound truths. That connection matters, that hope endures, and that even the smallest spark can illuminate the darkest spaces. As the ship moved on, he looked out at the stars. Each one represented a world, a civilization, a possibility. He felt a sense of humility and responsibility. The galaxy was vast, filled with challenges and wonders beyond comprehension. Yet he also felt hope. If humans could inspire this much change through presence and care, imagine what could happen when the galaxy embraced empathy, curiosity, and collaboration as a force of life itself. The Queen joined him at the observation window. "You have changed more than they realize," she said quietly. "And you have changed me as well. I thought I had forgotten what it meant to truly live, but you remind me that life is not measured by control or survival alone. It is measured by the connections we make, the hope we nurture, and the joy we share." The human smiled, humbled by her words. "I never intended to teach or lead. I only wanted to be present, to listen, to care, but it seems that is enough." "More than enough," the Queen replied. "You carry the essence of humanity, and it is a power unlike any other. You do not conquer, you awaken. You do not dominate, you connect. And that is a force that even the oldest civilizations cannot ignore." As they watched the stars together, the human felt a profound sense of purpose. He understood that the galaxy was not simply a place to explore or govern. It was a space to nurture, to inspire, and to heal. And humans, with their simple but powerful gifts of empathy, hope, and connection, had a role unlike any other. He realized that the journey ahead would not be easy. There would be skepticism, misunderstanding, and perhaps fear. But he also knew that he was not alone. The Queen, his guides, and countless others would witness and support this awakening. And most importantly, he carried within him the quiet, unstoppable force of humanity, the ability to bring life, joy, and connection wherever he went. And in that moment, as the stars stretched endlessly before him, the human understood that he had already begun to change the galaxy, not through weapons, not through politics, not through power, but through something far simpler, far deeper, and far more extraordinary: being. The human returned to the alien queen's home world, a planet of shining towers and vast gardens that glimmered under a pale sun. The air carried a subtle hum, a sound of the planet itself breathing. He had visited many worlds since his first encounter with the Queen, but this one felt different. Here the energy was intense, heavy with centuries of rules and control, yet beneath it, something long forgotten stirred. The Queen met him at the landing chamber. Her eyes reflected both the light of the sun and the weight of her thoughts. She spoke quietly. "Your presence has begun to change not just others, but me. I did not expect this, and yet I feel it in every thought, every action. You remind me of what we were before survival demanded we forget." The human nodded, sensing her honesty. "I am honored. I do not know if I can truly teach, but I can share what humans carry. We hold hope, care, and connection. That is our strength, even when life is difficult." The Queen studied him carefully. "Your words are simple, yet their effect is profound. We have spent millennia measuring everything: power, intelligence, longevity. But we forgot the quiet force of emotion, of presence, of shared understanding. You bring it back." She led him through the palace halls, corridors that twisted like living veins, adorned with sculptures and devices beyond the human's comprehension. They arrived at a vast council chamber, where the ruling body of her species awaited. Delegates from countless sectors filled the space, their expressions neutral, as was their way. They did not smile, did not gesture unnecessarily, for such displays were considered inefficient. The human stepped forward, heart steady. He remembered the Queen's hug, her trust, and her belief that even a single human could make a difference. He began to speak, not with commands or instructions, but with stories. He told tales of humanity, how humans survived disasters, how they comforted one another in times of grief, how simple acts of kindness could ripple across communities. He shared moments of laughter, of shared meals, of care given without expectation of reward. At first, the delegates sat still, expressionless. Some glanced at one another, curious yet unsure. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, subtle changes appeared. One delegate shifted, tilting her head as if listening more closely. Another let a soft smile escape, quickly suppressed but noticeable. A third blinked and looked down, recalling a memory long forgotten. The human continued, speaking with patience and care, allowing the power of presence to work. The Queen observed quietly. She felt the stirrings in her people, the small reawakening of emotion. She had not anticipated how powerful this would be. A human, fragile and short-lived compared to them, was touching something fundamental that technology and authority could not reach. She felt both pride and astonishment. The ripple was spreading. One elder delegate, whose age far exceeded that of any human, finally spoke. "We have not heard such words in millennia. We have forgotten the warmth of connection, the subtle joy of being fully present. Yet now I feel something unfamiliar, something stirring." The human nodded gently. "That is your own memory returning, your own ability to feel. Humans never lost it, and it can never truly be erased. We carry it because we rely on one another, because we survive through care as much as through strategy." The chamber was silent for a long moment, the hum of the planet vibrating softly beneath their feet. Then a delegate leaned forward, curiosity brightening his eyes for the first time. "Tell us more. Show us how humans carry this. Teach us how to remember." The human smiled. He realized that change was beginning in the most unlikely place. Not through laws or decrees, not through commands or displays of power, but through simple presence, shared stories, and genuine care. He led the council through exercises in communication, encouraging them to listen not just with their ears, but with their hearts. Slowly, laughter returned, soft at first, then more freely. Curiosity bloomed, questions were asked without fear of judgment, and small acts of kindness began to emerge among the delegates. The Queen watched this transformation, amazed at the simplicity yet depth of the human's influence. Her people had built empires and technologies beyond imagining, but they had never truly understood life itself. And now here was a being whose strength lay in something no one had measured: empathy, hope, and connection. Days passed, and the human continued his work. He walked among the citizens of the planet, listening to their stories, sharing his own, and gently reminding them of the value of joy and connection. Markets began to hum with quiet laughter. Children played openly in streets that had once been orderly but lifeless. Families shared meals with warmth and conversation. Artists, long discouraged from creating, began to display their work proudly. Music, laughter, and storytelling returned to places that had forgotten the pleasure of living. The Queen approached him one evening as the sun set, bathing the city in pale gold light. "Look at them," she said softly. "You have awakened something I thought was lost forever. I feared your arrival would bring chaos, that your presence would disrupt the order we maintained. But you have not disrupted, it has awakened. You have shown us that life is more than survival. It is living fully, with heart, with care, with connection." The human looked out at the bustling streets, feeling the warmth of his impact. "I do not know if I am teaching or if I am simply reminding them, but I see the spark returning. That is enough." The Queen nodded. "It is more than enough. Your kind carries a power we underestimated. You are not rulers, not conquerors, not masters. You are reminders. You teach without instruction, awaken without command. That is a force even we cannot measure." As the night fell, the human walked among the people, noticing the quiet changes that had taken place. An elderly couple held hands, something forbidden in formal settings for centuries. Children laughed and shared games without oversight. Artisans displayed their crafts without fear of criticism. Music floated through the streets, a gentle melody of life returning. He felt a quiet pride not in himself, but in the ability of humans to inspire, to connect, to awaken what had been forgotten. The queen joined him, standing silently as the city shimmered under the stars. "You have reminded us," she said, "that the galaxy is not only measured by longevity, intelligence, or order. It is measured by the ability to feel, to care, to connect. That is the essence of life, and your presence has brought it back." The human nodded, humbled by her words. "I only carry what we have always had. Humans do not seek glory or power in these acts. We simply live with hope, with care, and with connection. And sometimes that is enough to change the world, or even a galaxy." She smiled faintly, the first genuine smile the human had seen from her. Perhaps that is the lesson we all needed. Not to conquer, not to control, not to calculate every action, but to remember what it means to truly live, to connect, to feel. You, human, have reminded us. And for that, we are grateful. Days turned into weeks, and the human continued his quiet work. He met with educators, leaders, and families, guiding them gently toward remembering their capacity for joy, hope, and connection. Slowly, the planet transformed, not through laws, not through edicts, not through authority, but through simple presence, shared experiences, and care freely given. The human realized that this was the true power of his species. While other civilizations measured strength by weapons, fleets, or longevity, humans carried a different strength, the power to awaken, to inspire, to reconnect. And now, for the first time, he saw that this strength could ripple across entire civilizations, changing them not through force, but through quiet influence and care. The queen spoke to him one final time before he departed. "You have shown us that even in a world governed by rules and logic, the human spirit can awaken what has been lost. You have reminded us that life is measured not by survival alone, but by the connections we nurture, the hope we share, and the joy we allow ourselves to experience. Remember this, human, as you continue your journey. You carry a gift that no one else possesses, a gift that can change the galaxy." The human smiled, feeling both humility and purpose. "I understand, and I will continue. I will share what humans carry, not to dominate, but to awaken, to remind, to connect." As he left the planet, he looked back at the cities now alive with laughter, music, and art. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, not in accomplishments or accolades, but in the simple truth that humans had reminded an entire civilization of what it meant to live fully. He realized that this journey was far from over, but the path was clear. Humanity's greatest strength lay not in conquest, but in connection, not in power, but in presence. The queen watched from her palace, her eyes reflecting the starlight. She had once feared the humans' arrival, believing it might bring chaos or disruption. But now she understood. He had not disrupted, he had awakened. And in that awakening, she glimpsed a future where her people, and perhaps the galaxy itself, could remember what had been lost. The joy of living, the power of connection, and the quiet but unstoppable force of hope. The human's influence continued to grow, quietly spreading across sectors, touching lives and awakening hearts. Wherever he went, he left a trail not of conquest, not of control, but of life, laughter, and connection. And somewhere in the galaxy, the alien queen smiled once more, knowing that humanity carried within it a force unlike any other, a force capable of transforming worlds simply by being itself. The human stood at the edge of the observation platform, looking out across the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly, glittering with countless civilizations, each unique, each with its own story. He had traveled to many worlds, met countless beings, and witnessed the slow but steady awakening of hope and connection. Yet even with all this progress, he knew the journey was far from complete. The true work of humanity was not conquest, not control, not force. It was the quiet, persistent act of presence, of care, of inspiring others to remember what had been forgotten. The alien queen approached him silently, her robes flowing like water in the gentle light. She had been with him since the beginning, observing, guiding, and learning. Now her expression was a mixture of pride, awe, and something deeper, something she had long denied herself, a sense of hope for her people and for the galaxy. "You have done more than awaken others," she said softly. "You have reminded me of what we were before we chose survival over feeling, and now I see the possibility of a future where we can be more than we were." The human nodded. "It has not been easy, but I see the changes, small as they are, taking root. And I know that even the smallest act of care can ripple across worlds. That is humanity's strength. We survive because we connect, because we hope, because we persist even when it seems impossible." The queen paused, looking out at the galaxy. Your words are simple, but they carry more weight than any law, any command, any fleet. You remind us that the greatest power is not in domination, but in connection. That is a lesson I will carry forward for the rest of my existence. As they spoke, the human observed the ships arriving from different sectors. Delegates from civilizations he had visited were gathering, some with curiosity, others with a newfound warmth in their eyes. The changes he had inspired were spreading like quiet waves, touching even the most distant stars. Beings who had long forgotten laughter were now curious again. Communities that had been isolated by fear or rules were reaching out to one another. Creativity and art, music and dance, stories and shared meals were returning to places that had once abandoned them. The queen turned to him, her gaze steady and thoughtful. "Do you see what you have started?" she asked. "It is subtle, almost invisible, but it is unstoppable. Your kind carries a light that cannot be contained. Even now you are shaping the future of the galaxy, not through force but through presence. That is a power my people have never understood." The human smiled quietly. "I never intended to lead or to shape civilizations. I only intended to be human, curious, caring, present. And it seems that, by being ourselves, humans can make the galaxy a little brighter." The queen nodded, her eyes glimmering with a mix of emotion and understanding. "You have reminded us of the value of life itself, of connection and hope. And in doing so, you have inspired change that will last far longer than any empire, far longer than any rule. You have shown that true strength lies not in control, but in care." The human looked out at the galaxy, thinking of all the lives that had been touched, the hearts that had been awakened. He thought of the children who now laughed openly, the elders who now shared stories without fear, the communities that had found new joy in collaboration. He realized that this was only the beginning. Humanity's influence would continue to spread, quietly, gently, and powerfully, as long as humans remained true to themselves and to one another. The queen led him to a council meeting, the largest he had attended since arriving on her world. Delegates from dozens of species filled the chamber, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and warmth. The human stepped forward, feeling a deep sense of purpose, and began to speak not with authority but with presence. He shared stories of humanity's resilience, of how humans overcame hardship not through domination, but through empathy and connection. He spoke of hope, of joy, of care given freely and received openly. He encouraged the delegates to remember what had been lost, to embrace the simple but profound acts that could reconnect communities and awaken hearts. The delegates listened intently, some leaning forward, others closing their eyes as if recalling memories long forgotten. Slowly, reactions began to appear, soft smiles, nods of agreement, even quiet laughter. The human continued, allowing the power of his presence and the stories of his people to guide the moment. One elder delegate rose to speak. "We have lived for millennia in order, in logic, in control. We believed that feelings were dangerous, that hope was a weakness. But now, through this human, we see that we have been wrong. We see that connection and care are not weaknesses, but strengths. We are grateful for this reminder." The chamber erupted, not in noise or chaos, but in gentle murmurs of agreement and understanding. The human smiled quietly. He did not need recognition or praise. The changes were happening because they were possible, because the beings he touched had remembered what it meant to live fully. The queen watched, her heart lighter than it had been in centuries. She realized that humans had brought more than hope to her people. They had brought perspective, clarity, and a gentle but unstoppable force of life. She turned to the human and spoke softly. "You have not only awakened others, but you have awakened me. I see now that even the oldest among us can learn, can remember, can feel fully again. That is a gift beyond measure." The human nodded, humbled. "I only carry what humanity has always carried, hope, empathy, and connection. It is in our nature to care, to persist, and to find meaning in small acts. And sometimes that is all it takes to change the world, or even a galaxy." Days turned into weeks, and the human continued to travel, speaking with leaders, educators, families, and citizens across multiple civilizations. Wherever he went, subtle transformations occurred. Communities that had been isolated by fear or tradition found new ways to collaborate. Artists who had abandoned their craft began creating again. Music, laughter, and storytelling returned to streets, homes, and public spaces. Life was awakening, quietly but steadily, and the human realized that the ripple of his presence was unstoppable. The queen joined him often, observing the changes and learning alongside him. Together, they explored ways to encourage the awakening without forcing it. They understood that true transformation could not be commanded. It had to grow naturally, nurtured by curiosity, care, and shared experience. One evening, the human and the queen stood together on a hill overlooking a valley filled with light from thousands of homes. Children played openly, adults shared stories, and music drifted through the air. The human felt a deep sense of fulfillment, not in power or recognition, but in the quiet knowledge that life was returning to its fullest expression. The queen spoke softly. "You have reminded us that life is more than survival, more than efficiency, more than control. You have shown that the power of connection, of hope, and of care is unmatched. Humanity carries a force unlike any other, a force that cannot be contained or measured. And through your presence, the galaxy remembers that truth." The human smiled. "I never sought to be powerful or influential. I only sought to be present, to care, and to share what humans carry. And now I see that even small acts of kindness, connection, and hope can ripple across civilizations, inspiring change far beyond what we can imagine." The queen nodded. "You are a teacher, though not in the way we understand teaching. You do not instruct with commands or decrees. You awaken through presence, through example, through the simple act of being human. That is your gift, and it is one of the most extraordinary forces in the galaxy." The human looked out at the stars, thinking of all the civilizations he had touched and all the lives yet to be reached. He understood that his journey was far from over, but he also understood that humanity's strength lay not in conquest or domination, but in presence, empathy, and hope. He realized that this quiet force, carried by humans across the galaxy, could awaken civilizations, inspire connection, and bring life and joy to worlds that had long forgotten them. The queen placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "We have feared change, feared disruption, feared the unknown. But now we see that through connection, through care, through presence, the galaxy can be transformed for the better. You, human, are the embodiment of that truth. And we will carry this lesson forward, not as rulers, but as beings who remember how to feel, how to connect, how to live fully." The human nodded, feeling a sense of calm and purpose. He had learned that being human was not about strength, not about intelligence, not about longevity. It was about connection, hope, empathy, and the courage to care even in the face of uncertainty. And he had seen how these qualities could ripple across civilizations, awakening hearts and inspiring change without a single weapon fired or command issued. As he stood under the starlit sky, surrounded by the quiet hum of a planet alive with renewed life, the human realized that the galaxy had been transformed, not by technology or authority, but by the simple, enduring power of humanity. And somewhere nearby, the alien queen watched him with pride and gratitude, knowing that the galaxy would never be the same. For the first time in millennia, her people could feel again. For the first time, civilizations long isolated and controlled could connect and collaborate. And for the first time, a human had reminded the galaxy that hope, care, and presence were forces more powerful than any weapon, more enduring than any empire, and more transformative than any law. And so the human continued his journey, not as a conqueror, not as a ruler, but as a reminder. A reminder that even the smallest acts of care, connection, and hope could ripple across the stars, awakening hearts, inspiring civilizations, and changing the galaxy forever. Humanity had shown that its greatest strength lay